So we have about a little over 23 hours worth of classes left, if you can count our classes and our team meetings. But that's starting next Tuesday. I haven't had anyone volunteer to do next Tuesday for their pitch book. So we're gonna have to probably double up. We can do other days besides Tuesday, Thursdays. We can do Wednesdays, we can do Saturdays, Sundays. So we'll have some time. We can also go into the finals week. In absolute desperation, if you're not graduating, we can feed into the break. I don't mind doing that for a class like this. We have to. It just means you're getting incomplete. But if you're graduating, incompletes don't work. It only gives you like an extra 3 or 4 days. I mean, it could. Desperation if one day makes a big difference. Most of you probably want to be done with the class when the classes are done, though. So you probably don't want to do that. So it would take me 10 to 15 hours to build a pitch book. So you got, about five or so hours a week or more you're going to put into it to really get it done. The first pitch book is going to take a long time. You do need to set up. We're going to talk about the kind of things in there. You probably want a bit of a template, maybe in Excel with the graphs looking really good. So when you do your second pitch book, it's already colored and everything will just go right into the pitch book in the right colors. So you will get faster to do pitch books. In practice, it takes less time because you don't do presentations on the buy side. You do, you sit down with the boss with a bunch of scratchy paper. I know you're seeing the sell side. I've been really, really shocked on the sell side how badly those reports are written. I don't know if y'all noticed that. They're really horribly written. I would give those papers really low grades just from the quality of the writing. The paragraphs are way too long. There's a bunch of stuff stuck in one paragraph. It's hard to read. There's no bolding. So I'm not sure the sell side, even though they're supposed to be selling a product, I'm not sure it looks all that good. Where do you see the most fancy products out there? It's college students. So we're the ones going overboard making all these fancy reports. So, but you want that, right? You want something that you put out there on LinkedIn that shows the quality of your work. So you want it to be high quality. You're going to be doing this to an audience, which is a little bit different than in practice. So it's a little bit different on the buy side where you don't really do these type of presentations. You just sit down with your boss with a lump of paper and just kind of go through things. But you do want something that look pretty good. We'll look at some of these example pitch books. These are college students doing it. One thing I will show you out there on our homepage is we do have to give a report to UTMCO. Well, I can't even spell it. UTMCO. Is that right?
UTI.
Investment Management Company. UTMCO. All right. So we have to do a report monthly. I did the first one really fast because I wasn't really ready to do one yet. I didn't know we had to do one the very first month, but I did. Here's what I came up with. Y'all might not like this format, but this is what I came up with. I use our colors. I call it the Rowdy Fund, but I don't know if that's a good fund name or not. I don't know if y'all want to start your own hedge fund, call it like Roadrunner Asset Management or something. I don't know if that would be a good name. Rowdy probably doesn't sound very good.
What's the scientific name for Roadrunner?
Yeah, we could look that up. UT calls it the Longhorn Fund, which, I don't want to copy them and do the Roadrunner Fund. I use our colors and then I highlight it in orange. I essentially stole from our podcast for the month and talked about that. Put some graphs in there using our colors. So I'm kind of picking that dark blue. So you need to pick your color scheme that you're going to use. And then I talked about our portfolio, and we don't have much in our portfolio right now because we're still pretty passive. I looked at UT Austin and it looked pretty good until about page 3. And in page 3, the MBA students took over. It's a bunch of charts you would never see in practice. And I seriously doubt they use them in practice. I think someone just said, what's the most complicated math that we can use that answers the fewest questions? And that's what they came up with. So I don't want to do that. I want to do stuff that actually tells the person reading it how the portfolio did. I don't want to some scientific say, here's our factor model and factors no one cares about, and here's how we did. We're going to do factors. I want to be factors that actually drove our decisions, not factors someone made up on the fly. So I want to do something better than UT Austin. But anyway, that's the first draft. You might say, hey, we didn't have any input on that. We don't want our name on that, but any of y'all want to spend 6 hours building the next one? Or would you rather work on your pitch books? So you're kind of stuck with me doing it. So, as we get stocks in the portfolio, we'll start doing what you typically see. We're going to compare our allocation to the allocation, but we're sticking pretty close to the allocation by sector. We'll talk about one thing we're definitely going to do is grade our decisions based on the universe. So if there were 40 stocks in your sector, we're going to look at the return of your stock versus the rest of the sector and see how you did. We'll also look at the stock you picked versus your short buy list. That's really painful to do, isn't it? Really, really painful to do. Most people don't do it, but if you don't do it, you don't learn. You got to do it. You got to figure out, you got to know your mistakes. Most investors make horrible mistakes, but they never know because they never go back and look. So you say, wow, my stock's up 10%. That's great. Yeah, but the other two stocks in your buy list are up 20% and 32%. You picked the worst of the three. Yeah, but I still beat the index by 20 basis points. Yeah, you could have beat it by 2,200 basis points. So that's really, really painful to do. We did it for a few years in the investment society with our portfolio back then. And it was too difficult for me to keep track of it, but now I've figured out a way to keep track of it a little bit better. So we'll do that. If you graduate and want to know, email me and I'll let you know how your pick did versus the index. But really what you're asking is from a return and a risk standpoint. So there's a real debate on how you say, you can say, well, my stock didn't outperform, but it was lower risk. So it reduced the risk of portfolio. That's a really hard thing to bring into the equation, but we certainly could. There are certainly Sharpe ratios and Jensen ratios and those kind of things to do that kind of analysis. But most people focus on what? Return. I could have bought this stock instead of bought this stock. Which would you rather do? Have the highest return possible or the lowest risk possible? Most people want the highest return, even realize that the highest risk may mean that all disappears tomorrow if it blows up. Most people say, what do you think they're going to ask in our portfolio versus UT and A&M? They're going to say, hey, which portfolio had the lowest risk? Think they're going to ask that question? And what's the first thing they're going to ask? What was your return, right? So we talk about risk all the time, but when you get into practice, people look at returns. So we'll see. So anyway, so that's that. All right, let's talk about the pitch book. Whoever signs up first as the first pitch book, you have the chance of being the first stock purchased in our portfolio if the committee decides to buy your stock. So you have to have two things. You have to be first and you have to buy your stock. But that'd be pretty historic. We do that. We'll take a picture of that trade and it will probably go into an article about our portfolio. So if you want to be famous, but I don't want you rushing it just so you can get to the article, but we do need, is anyone ready to present next week? None? So you're all going to present the week of Thanksgiving?
Yes. The 23rd.
So we'll have to do-
I'll
Now, if you don't get it done the week before Thanksgiving, you'll probably have to do two. So be preparing two and do two together after that. We'll have to extend the class somehow and see. So we'll have to do some stuff outside of class because we're going to run out of class time. We do have finals week. We can use some of that depending on when your other classes are. So we'll figure it out. We are trying to arrange at a time with Victory Capital to go there and do about 2 hours of presentations. That's about 8 students. So we'll have to see what 8 want to do that.
We approved for December 11th.
December 11th.
From 5 to 7 p.m.
So we'll work on that and see what we can schedule there. And we'll have people from outside visiting in. I had lunch again with an alum. He's at UTSA. So I'm trying to hit as many alums as I possibly can. They're from all over the place, man. It's been pretty amazing where they are. Next week, I have lunch with an alum that the consumer discretionary might be interested in. He started a restaurant in San Antonio, so I'm going to his restaurant to have lunch with him. So that's going to be interesting. So anyway, all right. So we'll look at some of these examples, but a pitch book, the word pitch book is used a lot one of the most famous firms out there is Pitchbook.com. They sell a lot of data to create pitch books. I don't know how expensive they are, but they're pretty well known. That student I was talking to in Austria, he works for a firm that actually produces pitch books very similar to this, but actually produces the pitch book. I don't know if colleges have contracts with Pitchbook or not, but you can certainly probably see some overlap between them and what you can get from Bloomberg or Capital IQ. So to do a pitch book, what you're essentially doing is pitching something related to finance. The most common term for pitch book is usually on the private equity side, where you're pitching some firm to be sold or be bought or be funded, some venture capital, some M&A deal. A lot of times pitch book, a lot of times it's not in the public markets, it's in the private markets. But you can do a pitch book on the public markets. That's what I'm saying. That's usually done in colleges. We don't typically use the word pitch book when we're pitching a public stock to our boss to buy in the portfolio. We just try to convince him or her to buy the stock. But you can use the word pitch book for that. The first thing you're going to say, I want to take this really, really seriously. You need to come out of the gates extremely strongly. So the advantage you have of all these college teams is those teams, these videos, they're teams competing. They've got to have it memorized. They have to look up the whole time. You can somewhat read from a script if you need to. You get into details. It's not bad to look down and read. You wouldn't do that in a competition. But when's the one time you don't want to be reading? When you start. Well, the Q&A too, but when you start. That opening, you need to state very quickly what you're recommending. I'm recommending a buy on this company. This company is in an industry that's growing, and they have an extremely huge advantage in this industry. The market has not fully realized the potential for this technology. I think in the next 6 months, those are the kind of things you're going to say. So you're going to talk about valuation. You're going to talk about growth. You can talk about opportunity. Don't forget this word. This is pretty important, catalyst. Always keep, I don't know how to spell catalyst. Maybe Bill Gates does. Catalyst. What is a catalyst? You think your stock is cheap, but it might be cheap 3 years from now still, in 5 years. You need something that the market's going to see the valuation you're seeing. What is that catalyst? It could be quarterly earnings reports. It could be some drug that gets approved. It could be some new system that they use or something. We're talking about Netflix today. It could be purchasing Warner Studios. So what is that catalyst? So some of y'all are looking at stocks that our model has loved for years. So like IMAX and Casey's, we've loved those stocks for years, which means they've looked cheap for years. It's nothing worse than a stock that's always cheap. So you need something that's going to cause them to become expensive suddenly overnight. So you can say, hey, I've been right for 3 years and the market's still been wrong. But how much money did you make? You didn't make very much money, right? So think about that. So I would put that in there. When I had Jason, I still haven't been on getting in contact with Jason to talk, but when he did his spill on Apple, he did this in one paragraph and he gave the catalyst. His catalyst is all about margins. He says the market is expecting Apple's margins to shrink, but they will not shrink. And the market's going to figure that out in the next 2 earnings releases. And when they figure that out, Apple's going to come back to where they were before. Where you're going to see a 20-30% upside. Does that get you excited about buying Apple today? Yeah. And so find that statement. This is a statement you want to perfectly practice so that you can say it with great conviction up front. The rest of it, it can be written, be scripted. You can read off of it. You don't want to be staring at it. You do want to read through it and practice it. But the rest of your presentation, you look down. If you need to look at your notes, you can certainly do that. But that opening statement, make it strong. A very bold statement. Exactly what you're recommending. I'm recommending a buy on this company. You might mention the upside. I think this company has a good 30 to 40% upside, and you're definitely going to see that if this happens. What is that catalyst? So, any questions on the opening statement? Remember what Damodaran said? This is a storytelling part of finance. You've got to make rate case up front so they see where you're going. You want them excited. So don't start off saying, I'm going to do a pitch book on XYZ company. And you talk about the company, here's what they do. They don't know if you're recommending a buy, a sell, or hold, what you're recommending. Up front, state what it is. So they know what you're after. I like these words as your first two words. Or, well, I mean, you can say, I recommend a buy on the stock. I believe. I've had students say, can I use the I pronoun? Absolutely. You want it to be your recommendation. Put your name in there. Don't say we believe if it's your recommendation. It's like, who's talking we? It's I believe this is my recommendation. You could talk about specifically what it's going to do. You could talk about valuation. You could, doesn't sound as exciting, but you could say, I'm recommending a buy on Casey's. This is not a company you're going to find a strong growth story on, but I tell you what, this firm is consistent, predictable, well managed. They know what they're doing. Yeah, they don't grow really fast, but the market doesn't recognize that consistency, that consistent free cash flow year after year. We will be able to buy this consistent cash flow at a 20-30% discount. That's a convincing story. Doesn't sound as exciting as NVIDIA or something, but it's a convincing story that, hey, you can believe. I've heard some business breakdowns. This is a company that just knows how to produce cash quarter after quarter after quarter. Yeah, it's only growing at 4%, but it's going to be there. They're going to keep it going. They have an advantage in the industry. That's kind of my Ecolab's argument. It's like, man, they cornered the market. They're strong. They're doing really good stuff. You could make the argument that, this firm's doing well. I think it's well priced. However, they got this opportunity that's really huge. So if they don't get that opportunity, we got a decent stock and give us a good return. But if they get that opportunity, this upside, so you could excite them in the optionality side of it if this happens, but make that upfront your strongest case. Now, what if you finish your pitch book and you discover you don't have a buy recommendation? Then what do? It's a little more difficult, right? So I like this stock. I think it's a powerful company. I think it's got a lot going for it. I do think it's a little expensive right now. I think this is a company, I'm recommending this is a company we watch. If we can get it at this price, I think we should buy it. I think right now we need to wait. State that up front so they know that you're not recommending to buy the company. All right. And then you get into the company. So you got to let them know who the company is. Sometimes that seems kind of ridiculous because it's a company everybody knows really, really well, but still explain it who they are. So like with Casey's, you would expect it, talking about their convenience store, what are their main products, have some kind of pie chart of their main products. How much of Casey's is fuel? Does Casey's sell fuel? Does corner stores sell fuel? Or do they sell Valero's fuel? How much money do they make on that? Do they make any money off of fuel? What do they sell? What's their number one item? What can you sell? Where are they located? So I would expect a map with all the locations of Casey's around the US and where they're growing, the number of locations, those type of things. So describe the company, what they do, the culture, key products. You'll usually have some type of pie chart or something on their main segments of how they make money. Segments can be the products. It can be the products and then geography. It can be the products and then a map, however you want to do it, where their stores are located. Those kind of things can be critical. If they're in China, who was I talking to today? Was that IMAX, right? So I didn't realize IMAX was in China. That's kind of exciting, right? There's a growth story right there. So pretty interesting. And IMAX is doing something new and interesting. It's also going to get a lot of discussion. Reed's going to have to figure that out. If he does IMAX, have to figure out, is that a revenue source or not? We're looking at, what was the other one I was looking at? Who did I talk to after Reed? Gosh, who was talking to? Who was talking to me today? Nicholas, you're a company, you're doing cars, right?
We were making cars in New York Times.
New York Times, you were talking about, yeah, subscription revenue versus advertising revenue. That was really, really interesting. What's going up and what's going down? Which
Is advertising going up?
that's it. You might think that, but what's going up? Yeah, you might think of it as, you saw the chart, so subscription revenues going up, averages of revenues coming down. Pretty interesting model. We know advertising coming down for just local newspapers, right? Because the circulation is so low, but New York Times has a really good circulation, but they've really made successful the digital transfer and gotten subscribers. When we were talking about, there's a few. I use The Economist. I love it. I do pay them a subscription. It's a really good magazine. I'm willing to pay for it, but I don't buy the Express News. My neighbor buys the Express News. I have no idea why, but she does. She says she wants the coupons. I was like, it's got to be a cheaper way to get coupons. But so those kind of things you're talking about. What's their main product? So you might find it's shocking that New York Times 60% of their revenue comes from subscriptions. Only 40% comes from advertising. Advertising is declining. Those are the kind of things you want to state up front. Make sure they're really clear on this business. If you're doing a restaurant, is it franchise or is it non-franchise? If it's franchise, what percent are franchise, which aren't, where the revenue coming from? Understanding those type of things is really, really critical. You want to talk about their revenue growth. Revenue growth, I think, is probably the most important people look at from a growth standpoint, because earnings can kind of fluctuate around because of some accounting noise. You might do it by product. Find some ways to do this. If you look at the Amazon example, oh my word. I think it's just way too busy, their charts. Find too wordy, right? Too many words on the page. Try to find chart, and I don't like, the kind of bright white background. But find ways to show these things that are really clear. My recommendation to be is use more slides. So rather than putting a bunch of text and slides on, I'd almost, if you're trying to make a point, put one slide up and make that point. I just think it's a lot clearer. Sometimes in the competitions, you have fewer slides because you're limited on time and you just want to get through the thing. But you could just show one slide there, or maybe you have a few words on the side. I don't like sentences. I prefer 1 or 2 or 3 words, and then you speak the full sentence and kind of just say, what are your main points? But you kind of decide how you're going to do presentations. But it does look good. I don't like this slide at all. They do say, we believe. They're like, who is that? How many people are involved in this? But talk about growth. You might talk about margins here. So think about what's really, really important to your company. Is it gross margin? Is it net margins? You might put something there, but describe the company, and a good way to show it is what businesses are in. If there's something that they're doing that's brand new, that they've never done before, that they're thinking about, this is a good time to bring that up right front. One major new strategy this firm has is something along those lines. That you need to somewhere in here talk about their competitive position. Who are their key competitors? Can you do market share? So, who was it today? It was Nicholas again. So Statista was pretty valuable, right? No, it wasn't. Was it you? Yeah, Statista was really valuable. So I just asked, okay, I know New York Times, Economist, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times. Those are the ones that I can think of really successful. You said The Guardian. I'm not as familiar with The Guardian, but those are the ones really successful getting subscribers online. And you compare those companies with subscriptions. And sure enough, we went in Statista, and Nicholas just typed New York Times. And guess what came up? 1,000 links on New York Times, subscribers. Revenue per subscriber, which is exactly what he wants. What's revenue per subscriber for New York Times versus Wall Street Journal versus The Economist? That's really, really interesting. How many subscribers? Right, New York Times was by far the largest. That's going to really help him in his Pitchbook. What was like 4 million? 11 million.
Next highest is like 4 million.
Yeah, so they're like more than twice. That's going to help. This is a firm who's really, really figured out how to go to the digital age with subscribers. What's happened to their costs, do you think?
Gone down.
Gone down. What's more expensive, mailing out a newspaper or putting it online? Comes down, right? Advertising costs will come down because AI is going to do most of that. So he has a lot of stuff he can do there. And all he had to do was type New York Times into Statista, and it came up. So probably you could try with like Casey's, type Casey's and Statista. Have y'all tried Statista? Remember what I told y'all on Statista? We don't know if the data is good, but you can assume it's good and just go with it for our purposes. Unless it just looks like completely outlandish. So who are the competitors? So find some way to find that. So the issue I was having with Casey's is they're like Love's. We have a former colleague I used to work with. He went to work for Love's. Love's is privately owned. Does Statista have the number of locations that they have? And I know talking to him about Love's big focus was on truckers, making their lives as convenient as possible, doing a lot of special things for them. That's a very different market. And then he said 7-Eleven. Well, 7-Eleven's a Japanese company. That makes things a little tough. Then he had another company, Circle K, was Canadian, right? So he's got companies all over the place, and he's got a bunch of these small mom and pops. But if he goes into Statista, if Statista, you just put your company in, you'll find not just stuff in your company, but they'll also see stuff in your company in the context of the industry. So use Statista. I love Statista where you can just type a word, a company name, and it brings up everything that's anywhere closely related to that. You can just go through that list and find stuff that can help you. And a lot of Statista stuff is this comparison. I mean, it's like a perfect chart for Nicholas is New York Times subscribers versus all the others. That's exactly what you need in a Pitchbook. But revenue per subscriber would be really, really valuable. Do you know what New York Times is per year?
What their,
Subscription costs for like their,
I know.
maybe their premium. And you could probably Google some of these.
I think they charge them monthly. Or
$4 a week. So $200 a year. I think I spend $70 a quarter for Economist. But New York Times is daily, The Economist is weekly. It's interesting, but I would really love to see the revenue per subscriber on that. See the growth in subscribers. I don't know if you're able to find that on Statista, but it would be really, really good to see the growth in subscribers. That'd be really, really valuable. The Economist just charge less for an online than they do for paper. But what's the differential there? If it's $10 cheaper, but it costs them $15 less to do it digital versus on those are the kind of things they're looking for. But Statista is really good. You need something that sets up your company. So like what I mentioned with Love's, just talking to Love's, Love spends extra money on big parking lots, air conditioning, TV hookups. They have special bathrooms and showers for the truckers. Yeah, I mean, that's a big business, right? Truckers is a lot of money. There's a lot of drivers. So what does Casey's cater? Do y'all know what a Casey's is?
no.
I mean, have you ever been in one? Yeah. I don't have a good vision of them because they just look like older shops to me, but I know they have a following. You got to figure out what that following is. What do people love about it? I understand Buc-ee's. I don't like Buc-ee's. I brought a brand new car and I was giving a friend a ride and he went to Buc-ee's and bought a huge bag of their cheddar cheese popcorn and spilled it all over my brand new car carpet. So that's my view of Buc-ee's, but you kind of understand that one. What's the difference between Buc-ee's and Circle K and Casey's? So what is it about them? This is really, really critical. What is it about them that makes them different from everybody else? What's their focus? What's their strategy? So Casey's maybe is their location, their name recognition, their low cost. They try to be the cheapest. I'm not sure Buc-ee's is the cheapest. Buc-ee's get a lot of free advertising. I don't know if y'all noticed that. People, TV shows will do big stuff. Now there's a Buc-ee's being built somewhere around here where there's huge neighborhood is complaining about it. They don't want it, but they generally get pretty good press. But what is it about this that makes it unique? You can distinguish it from everybody else. Whoever's watching a presentation should be able to go away and say, man, that's their niche. That's what they do better than anybody else. They can be a low cost. Remember, porters either have low cost provider or you got the differentiator. If their focus is low cost, then are they really low cost? Is what they sell generally 10-20% cheaper than the competition? Is that what it is? Is it product offering? They offer more choices. Is it their locations? They know how to place their stores really, really well. There are some companies that is McDonald's is known for that, placing stores really, really effectively. Brand name recognition, those are kind of things. What is it that they have? And then you need to somehow prove it. You can't prove it by going to annual report and their management says we have really high service quality. Because that's a biased opinion. How can you prove this firm really is distinctive in that area? All right. So I'll talk to a few of y'all. This might choose which firm. So if you've got a choice between two firms, this might help you decide, because on the Pitchbook, there are some firms that are easier to do Pitchbooks on than others because of that distinction. You can really identify this firm. So obviously IMAX, y'all know IMAX, very distinctive firm, very different. Have y'all been to an IMAX? Is it worth the extra costs? Probably depends on the movie, right? But you know, there's a distinction there that you notice. You can bring that into your presentation. The history of the firm. You could talk about its history, its M&A activity. One thing I think is really effective, because you do want to talk about the stock performance, is you could do a long-term stock performance and do the history on that stock performance. That can sometimes be really powerful. They had some major merger acquisition. You could point that out on the stock line. You might compare the stock to the industry, to a competitor, to its industry, the overall stock market. That you can quickly bring into Bloomberg and then just mark those places in the history. Don't go overboard. Really, it's the most important stuff, all right? So if you're doing McDonald's, it's been around forever. So I don't know, to me, McDonald's, when they started offering breakfast, I think that's pretty material. That's pretty important. I don't know where else. When they first offered a McRib, probably not that important. I've never had one of those. I can't believe that's that important. But you know, what is it that they do? I think McDonald's, probably the most important thing they've done the last 30 years is move more stores to franchising. So you can maybe mark that 20% of stores are franchise, 80% are franchise, whatever. And so that conversion over time. But something on the history of the firm that's important. If they are doing M&A, M&A is usually major M&A, not small ones. If they may have $40 million purchase, maybe not a big deal, but a massive purchase would be pretty important. If they spun off something, that could be important as well, like Valero spinning off Corner Store, that would probably be important to put in their timeline. Something on the history, but don't go overboard. All right, questions up to there? I'm not saying you have to do it in this order, but this is kind of the general order that you would see. They should, in your first 2 or 3 slides, know exactly who this company is, what's going on. My best example of this is Business Breakdown. I think Business Breakdown does this really, really, really well. They do it in 45 minutes. You don't have that much time, but you've got to synthesize it down to say, who is this from? If you're doing a buy, you know, keep it strong. What is the strength? What's really, you know, especially here, what is that competitive position that they have that really impresses you the most? Make that really front and center on your company. I don't know if you tried ChatGPT. Someone tried ChatGPT and just say, I don't know, Pablo tried on Casey's. What is the most distinctive thing about Casey Corner Store? And just see what do you think ChatGPT would say? They're the cost leader, best selection, really good. You know, Pablo's talking about prepared meals. What is it? I kind of know what they would say on Costco and Walmart. I kind of know those companies, but what would they say? So I don't know. Have y'all been trying ChatGPT and see what it says? I'm not saying that's going to be right, but all right. Then be really, really, really careful. Management. Guess what we don't need here is biographies. I don't care that they went to Harvard and Stanford and Yale. I don't, you know, it's just not that important. So who is management? You probably will need to talk about the CEO, how long they've been there, a little bit about them. Sometimes you do have a discussion on corporate governance. I'm not saying you 100% of the time do that. But it can be important if there's a founder involved and they have a lot of control. Obviously, Meta, you have a founder, Zuckerberg, so has a lot of control over that firm, and he's kept that control. You have Alphabet has different classes of shares, which gives you, so what is the corporate governance? I don't know how many of your firms have a founder still involved. I doubt it's too many of them, but that can be an important issue. Is there a CEO change? CEO changes are always important. I saw this at USA. Every CEO change at USA was mammoth. It was massive. Switching from McDermott to Davis, Bob McDermott, I forgot the second one. The third Bob. I mean, it was each one of them was a major change, and then they went to Stewart, and then they went to Joe, then to Stewart, then it's just every one of them was a huge different change. So every time a CEO changes at a firm, that's a big deal. If a CEO is coming close to retirement, who's going to replace that CEO is really critical. You hear that in Business Breakdown. They always talk about the CEO, their impact on the firm. If there is, and sometimes it's not just a founder, but an important executive. So who might that be at Starbucks? Howard Schultz, still pretty important, right? Still kind of the shadow over the organization. So is there someone there? Obviously, Berkshire Hathaway, you still have that founder sitting around. So is there some person that has molded the personality of this firm? And I think Business Breakdowns does that extremely well. Also, we don't hear about their biography, where they grew up, where they went to school. It's their philosophy about the firm. If you can find strong quotes from your management, that's really good. That's why I recommend go to YouTube and just type in the CEO of your company and find a powerful quote that you can put into your presentation. It's always really good. It was challenging with our CFA research team this last time. It was hard to find strong firm quotes from that firm. All right, this was my least favorite part of the previous class, as I'd come to that part of the paper and there was always a bunch of biographies. Oh, I was so bored. They covered the CEO, the CFO, the chief and technology officer, where they went to school. It's like, I don't care. What is the strategy of this firm and how is the management? So your real key is, what does management do? Management changes the position of the firm, changes strategy. What does this management want to, how does it want to move the company? What does they see they need to be doing differently? So find that out about your company. That's why, previous classes, I've shown that interview with the Costco president. I just love that interview. In 2 sentences, he explained the company and he says, we're not changing. Our goal is to make as little money as possible. We want thin margins. Anytime we save money, we're passing that on to the customer. Our goal is turnover. We're going to sell a bunch of stuff with thin margins, and we're not changing. A very limited SKU so we can control our suppliers. I mean, he described Costco. You know exactly what it is. Very simply, that's our mission. That's what we're going to do. We're not changing that. We're going forward with that. That sounds pretty good. You're going to still have a $1.50 hot dog. Yeah, we're keeping that at $1.50. So really critical on management. So have something strong there. Could you have a picture of the management or something like that? You can just be real careful. Your presentation doesn't become an advertisement for the firm. So, all right. Any questions up to there? What would happen in your presentation if you've come to the end and they ask you who the CEO is and you don't know? That doesn't look very good, right? I told Reed's team, you got 5 people. Someone better know every member of management, where they came from, what they've been doing. Someone better know every M&A deal they've done. but there's only one of you. So there's a few things you definitely need to know who this is. That's really embarrassing if you don't know this. Our very first CFA research team, I thought they could have won, but they got really nervous. The first guy that spoke forgot the names of his team members, and so it wasn't a good out of the box. But it was Rent-A-Center, and they didn't spend that much time on management. I didn't think it was all that important because Rent-A-Center is not that complicated of a firm. But they were really upset that the team didn't know in detail about the management of the team of the firm. I don't think you need to know all of management, but you need to know something about the CEO. The CEO really is really critical. All right, ownership issues. This kind of goes under corporate governance, but look at it. There's sometimes I think you can completely ignore this because it's just kind of a normal firm. But are there any activists in investors? Is there any management ownership? Is there any one really large stockholder that kind of wields power over this firm? So look into that. You can get that out of Bloomberg. I forget exactly what button you push, but you just go to their screen, you'll find a Bloomberg button on ownership. Who's likely the largest stockholder? BlackRock. Who's likely the second largest stockholder? Vanguard. It's pretty obvious. So if BlackRock's the number 1, 2, and Vanguard's not number 1 and number 2, BlackRock and Vanguard, that becomes interesting, right? So institutional owners, what do we know about institutional owners? If they don't like the firm, what do? They sell the stock. They don't try to change the company. They just sell the stock and go away. So it's other owners that you're looking for, others that are going to be critical. I think the Amazon example from corporate finance, I think they do have some ownership structure in here somewhere. So you might use them as an example. Look at that. That looks familiar, doesn't it? Some of y'all are worried about how crazy your football chart looks. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? Now, this is a little bit different, the way the kind of models they're using. Way too many numbers on a page, right? This is kind of ridiculous. Yeah, so they ran 3 cases. Do we really need to see every single year on all this? So not the badmouth CFI, but that's just a little bit much. But anyway, I know they do something, or at least one of the ones I showed. I do not like these charts. I don't know if y'all use these kind of charts. I don't like these kind of charts. I found them a little bit hard to read, but yeah. So there's something in here on ownership.
I know it's in the Cap IQ model. How many slides is that presentation, Professor?
Well, that's up to you. You're limited to 10 minutes. So if you're spending 2 minutes a slide, then you got 5 slides. If you're spending 30 seconds a slide, then you got 20 slides. But yeah, you got to decide what you're going to do. You can have backup slides for questions that you can jump to if you need to, but you got to. 10 minutes is a long time. I can read, just stepped out, but there's, I forget, there's like 20 something slides maybe. But they're moving fast. If you watch some of these competitions, I mean, they're moving pretty fast. All right. So again, getting back to unique characteristics of the firm, this is kind of repetitive, but you really want to focus in on this. What is their economic moat? What is their sustainable competitive advantage? So like Diana's doing Nathan's. So what's unique about them is what they sell, right? So hot dogs is a little different, but that's not that difficult to copy. So is there anything other than the fact they just sell something a little different that gives them some kind of unique advantage? Is it their location? Is it something about how they prepare the food that's unique? What is it that they have that? So, you know, Chipotle might talk about it's fresh. We do really fresh food, and if they actually do that. So what is it about their product? Well, Diana, if you haven't a statement for that yet, what makes them unique? But, you know, if you can somehow, and you can bring your product into the presentation, that's a little overkill, but you could certainly, if you want to prove it or a picture of it or something. But what is unique about walking in Nathan's? I've never been into Nathan's. Have y'all been into Nathan's before? Does it feel unique, or does it feel like any other fast food? So that's what Diana's got to figure out. So have you been to a Nathan's before? No. So you have to kind of figure out, is there something unique about them? Fast food is fast food, but you know, Chipotle has a following. McDonald's has a following. I hate McDonald's. I don't know why anybody shops there, but There's a long line outside of one every time you go by. So what is it that they have? So remember, it's got to be sustainable. You can't just say they're good at something if it's easily copied and other people can do it. So what is it about them that is unique? And is it an economic moat? And you need to stake that up front. I think this gives them a unique advantage. I don't think their competitors can copy this because you want to make that pretty strong. Now it can be with something like Nathan's, it can be just the brand name. People know the brand, they recognize it, you know what they're buying when they go in there. That can be strong enough. I think that's the McDonald's side. I don't think McDonald's has superior food, but you know, when I went to Greece, I was so sick of Greek food after 3 days. I just hated Greek food. So guess where we ate our last meal in Greece, in Athens? McDonald's. So like, let's go to McDonald's. I know exactly what McDonald's tastes like in Greece because it's the same everywhere else. That's a huge advantage for McDonald's. You know, it's a product that's very well known. Do they have strategic alliances, joint ventures, other firms they're dealing with? So you're seeing that obviously on the semiconductor side with OpenAI. Everybody's dealing with OpenAI. It's kind of freaky. You know, NVIDIA is trying to make themselves kind of the AI go-to firm by doing all these joint. I mean, my word, Ben did a great job, didn't he? Just going through all those different arrangements going on with OpenAI, and NVIDIA's involved in 80% of them. If you do NVIDIA, they're going to ask you, are they overdoing it? Is too much? They're really getting money back on that. So pretty critical question. All right. And then where is the firm going differently than they are today? What's their big strategic change? What's management's strategic focus? And try to tie that into their CapEx and M&A. I think it's a big mistake not to do a detailed analysis of their CapEx. Where is that CapEx going? What are they spending money on? And then M&A. You can go into Bloomberg. It is really difficult, but if you just type MA in Bloomberg, it's tough. But if you do a good enough search, you can bring up all the M&A activity just for your firm. Has anyone figured out the M&A function? It's a little bit squirrely the way they do it. I mean, it's like if you type in your firm name, it brings up your firm stuff. It brings up a million other things. It's like if the firm's even halfway mentioned. So I haven't figured out how to get it really good. But the data is out there. Bloomberg does have it. It will list all the M&A activity, including things that were talked about that were never executed. It does have all of that detail. You can just bring up the GP on the stock and just do important news, and you can go back and find M&A activity there. You probably could. I haven't tried that with the GP function. I should probably try it, but you can go over and tell it, highlight M&A activity. I think I could probably do. We should try that. I'll try to remember to do that tomorrow. You can use the GP function and say, show me all the M&A activity, and you can probably put that on a GP function. So MA, GP, those are kind of things that might give you that. But like, yeah, well, I was telling Reese, you better know you don't have to know every single merger and acquisition, but you better know all the major ones, what year they happen, about the cost of them. You might just scribble them down on a piece of paper, have them somewhere, maybe not in your presentation, just in case you get a question on that. That's when you get in trouble. There are certain things on the investment side, they just assume you know, like the CEO, like M&A activity. Have those big ones somewhere so you can look it up so you know it. Especially recent ones, really important. I actually think this is the most important thing management does. You don't hire management to keep the trains running. You hire management to change the firm. So we used to do X, now we're going to be doing Y. Now, if I'm running Costco, yeah, maybe it's keep the trains running. But there are certain things you might want to change. Think about, are we going to do home delivery? Are we going to do curbside pickup? We're going to be asking those questions. What are we going to do digitally? What are we doing online? You're going to be asking those questions continuously just to make sure you're not missing out on something. Even if you say that's not part of our mission, it could become a part of our mission. One of my favorite business breakdowns is the Cinnabon. It's one of the first ones, Cat Cole. I listen to that, go, okay, here's a CEO, she understands her business. She understands her role as a CEO. She understands that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. I mean, I don't know if y'all have listened to that one. I highly recommend the Cinnabon one. I listen to that going, if she were my CEO, I'd want to work for this company. Because she had the right vision of a CEO. That's what you're looking for, is a CEO that's saying, how are we going to treat our franchisees if we're going to do this contract with Burger King? Our franchisees aren't going to like that, right? They're selling all this stuff in airports, and now we're doing stuff at Burger King. Is that messing up? And she said, no, I understand our franchisees. They're our number one. We got to make them happy. If they're not happy, this doesn't work. She understood that. That's what you want to hear from a CEO. This is the most critical thing we're doing, but we're going to start doing this. We got to fix this. We got to do better on this. So I don't know with the Nathans or Casey's. I don't know what that means. Diana, is there anything Nathan's is doing that's radically new? Are they just going to keep adding new stores? And sometimes that's about all you can come up with, add new stores. So what's their strategy for adding new stores? Are they going to move into another country, another state? You know, those kind of things you're looking for, but that's what management is after. The Starbucks acquired series, they're actually interviewing Howard Schultz. Really, really fascinating. That whole story of how his vision of Starbucks, it was really, really quite fascinating. Some of you listen to and you say, boy, that was pure luck. Yeah, it's a big firm. It's made a lot of money, but I mean, that whole thing could have collapsed. You hear that with Netflix, right? Have y'all heard the story of Netflix? Is original, you know, it almost went completely under. They begged Blockbuster to buy them out, and Blockbuster said, no, you're not worth it. And then they completely put them out of business. You need to spend some extra time on competition and the strength of the competition. So the challenge with this pitch book is you've already done your industry analysis, and I'm not asking for an industry analysis, but you will have to somewhere in here talk about the industry. So there may be somewhere either here or under the SWOT analysis where you have to probably bring in some industry issues that you talked about earlier in your presentation. Remember on the SWOT, a lot of times the opportunities and threats are industry issues. So if there's key industry issues that your firm is addressing in a very specific way, you probably want to bring this up. So this industry has a serious issue with employment. We hire a lot of immigrants, and this is with the Trump administration's or we hire a lot of high skilled workers with the Trump administration, whatever. One of those key issues is very unionized, or we have a lot of precious earth that we need to buy and this thing going with. So whatever that is, it affects the whole industry, but is your company addressing that in a specific way? How are they getting around that? How are they handling, like with Reed's team, it was like, tariffs is going to come up. It's right in the middle of that. You better have a very detailed answer on tariffs. I don't know if that's going to be the case with you. We're kind of beyond that now, but tariffs might be something that you bring up. If you're doing, so Autumn, you're doing airlines, right? So obviously the shutdown is going to be a big issue that you have to address. Sometimes you're doing your pitch book right in the middle of a storm and you have no choice. You got to talk about it, even if you think it's going to be done two months later. You're going to have to talk about it. How are you addressing this? How do you get through this? We had a guy from United Airlines speak to us during COVID or after COVID. And I had two questions for him. How did you handle COVID? And he said, yeah, blah, blah, it's really tough. And I said, okay, how did you handle coming out of COVID? He said, yeah, that was even worse. Because we had all these people at home. We suddenly had to bring them all back in. And I assumed they had this great AI model that, linked up flight attendants and pilots and they're all in the right. So he said, no, it's pretty much on paper. And we're calling people, it's a mess. And said, that's a disaster. So yeah, so you might see a shutdown now with United because of what's going on, but they have to ramp back up when the government comes back on. How are they going to do that right in the middle of Thanksgiving? Those are kind of things you have to ask. How are you handling that kind of thing? So have your SWOT analysis in there. You'll notice a lot of pitch books don't have a SWOT analysis in there, so you need to do the SWOT analysis. You may not call it SWOT analysis, but somewhere you're going to talk about their strengths and weaknesses. So you can say, here's my SWOT analysis, or you can do a SWOT analysis and strategically place it. It's up to you to do that. And then something that the business breakdown's always does, what is the biggest risk you see to this company, or what's the biggest thing management should be worried about, or what's the biggest risk to your analysis, however you want to state it. Where could you be wrong? Where could this company mess up? However you want to talk about risk. You usually do that near the end. Sometimes that can be really bad because you might say something and then the listener's going, oh, you know what? That's really bad. Boy, why would you ever buy this stock with that risk hanging out there? So you might destroy your entire presentation, but you got to talk about the risk. Where could I be wrong? So bring that up near the end. You might try to soften it by saying, but I think management has been here before. They faced this in 2000 whatever, and they came through it. It was tough, but they understand that they face this. You hear that a lot in business breakdown. Yeah, but this management, they've been there before. They know to handle this. They're really, really good at this. If that happens, it will be bad, but they will survive. Have that kind of caveat there so you don't completely destroy your presentation by bringing up something people go, oh man, that's horrible. You could probably kill every single stock pitch out there because there's always some big glaring risk facing a company. Then on the company fundamentals, I would not have a section. You kind of see that with the CFI. I would not have a section on fundamentals. What I would do is look at the fundamentals and throw in that chart at the appropriate time. If you're talking about growth, put a turnover chart in there. If you're talking about profitability, put a margin chart in there. If you're talking about debt or M&A, put that chart in there. If they're doing a lot of M&A using debt, then have a debt chart there. And so, yeah, their debt really jumped up, but it's back down in more normal levels.
So just looking at it, we spend a ton of time on what is section 2 again? Like you broke down into many bits, but overview and history of the company.
Yeah, remember, you're not going to do every single one of these. Some of these, like SWOT, you're going to kind of fit in other places in company funds. So, but you've got to make sure they understand who this company is and what their strategic place is. You're going to be shocked at how little time you spend on valuation. This has always been one of my problems with pitch books. I want to know their discount rate, their growth rates, valuation to me is the most important. You don't see that, right? They didn't question your valuations at all, do they? You just showed them. It's like, hey, we think it's worth $83. It's like, okay, good. They ask you other questions. How are tariffs going to hit you? The most important thing in the presentation is valuations, but they don't ask.
So if you just like throw darts at a dartboard, come up with a random number, and they're not going to say anything.
Well, I mean, how are they going to question you? So you look at CFI. I mean, they got a lot of data with forecasts and all this but are you actually even going through all these numbers? You think someone's going to sit there and wait, you use 3.9? Are you kidding me? That should be 4.136. They can't, someone's looking at this first time, right? Well, maybe they've seen that firm like 20 times, but they don't know. The people in the audience, now some of you are going to get some people who do know your firms really, really well. That could be good, that could be bad. So let's see, like Daniel may listen to Diana's. He's management at Whataburger. He may see Nathan and go, are you kidding me? Nathan's? If you know what, so who knows? Would that be good or bad? Do we want to know the bad story if we missed it, or do we want to be Pollyanna and buy a stock that's about to crash?
I want to be so ignorant of it all.
Really? Yeah. So, it's not going to kill your grade if you miss something like that because you're first try, but it can get paid. Fortunately, Daniel's a really nice guy, so he's not going to be cruel to you. But it's possible someone's going to be on the call is going to say, "Are you kidding me, NVIDIA? There's no way it's going to work out," and they're going to give you that kind of hassle. Reed's team had a problem with someone has a political axe to grind, right? It's like, are you telling, tariffs aren't bad, tariffs are wonderful things, they're gonna save the whole country, it's like, you have those buzzsaws, you just be ready for them, but really, when you come down to your football chart, you do have a problem if one of them just way off, so I told a couple of you, you have one of your bar charts, just, it's hard to explain, and yeah, take it out. Don't have it, most of them are between 50 and 120 bucks, and you have one that goes out to 22,000 bucks. Probably take that out. There's something wrong with the assumption, something strange going on. There are times where you do have to manipulate it. Even if you believe the numbers, you have to manipulate it because you just can't explain this. So don't set up an obvious buzzsaw that's just going to wipe you out. All right. So be careful on that. But I mean, this doesn't look like an obvious buy or sell, does it? They think it might be worth $331 or $3,900. That's a pretty wide range. So, but you see these kind of things, and I don't remember Reed saying how, but y'all would have manipulated within it. You wouldn't have had a, it's just, use your life. You ain't go in there and have something just absolute crazy truck. So like, I forget whose it was. Maybe it was Nicholas's or one of y'all. The discounted cash flow just didn't work that well because you had a really, maybe it was IMAX, you had a really fast growing company, given this kind of model, you only have one growth rate. Maybe take that one out because that model just doesn't make sense. You need a firm that's growing 25, 30% for the next 5 or so years. Given this kind of model, you just can't figure a way to manipulate it to get it to work. Then just take it off you don't have to show all those models if you don't want to. So fundamentals, I would work them in throughout, and make sure you pick your colors, get real consistent, set that up front. What is your color number, and make sure you're consistent on your slides. You want that for your presentation. You want it if you put it on LinkedIn, you want to have a real consistent look. You can see how I'm not a real big fan, but they do have a certain color approach that they use throughout. It's far too many numbers. Let me show you real quick. Any questions on that? I'm going to show you a few. And then you finish up your evaluation. And your final presentation. Here I'll talk about the risks of the recommendation. You can put that with the evaluation chart or somewhere you need to talk about where you could be wrong. And then you have final chart. Your final chart essentially is a chart that states what you said in the very first sentence. But says it as a chart. So the first sentence you don't have on the chart, you're just saying it. You come in, you have the company. I'm coming in with a buy recommendation XYZ because I think this blah, blah, blah. Then your last chart just says that again. But says it in words on the chart.
In words on the chart?
Yeah. Our final recommendation. So they see it written out exactly why you're recommending.
So
you start off saying it without it on the chart. That's the way I've seen it. But you'll see that's really pretty universal. You say it without it on the chart, and then the very last chart is like, this is why I'm recommending it. And it's real clear. It's not the 50 reasons why I recommend this stock. It's the 2 or 3, it's a pretty short list of those main things you see. I see 50% upside from here, strong leader in their economy, and in their industry, in a fast growing industry where they have some strong protections from competition.
when you say chart, is it like just the 3 tables?
The chart, I just mean the slide.
Okay.
Slide, yeah. Use charts when you can. That's where I don't really like CFI. CFI is far too much text and far too many tables. If you can use a chart, use a chart. Be careful on certain charts. Like if you're going to do the stock price over 30 years, make it a log normal chart. So it doesn't look like that. Be real careful on how it shows. Make sure the chart you're using tells the story. Usually what you want to do, almost 100% of the time, you want the title of the chart to explain why the chart is in your presentation. So if you're talking about their improving margins, say improving margins in the title. If you can't put it all in the title, then put some text box in there and say, this is when they did this or something. So the person looking at the chart, because remember what's going on. You got stuff on the chart, on the slide, and you're talking. What is your listener doing? Are they listening to you or are they reading the slide? Usually they're reading the slides, which means they're not hearing anything you're saying. So you got to make sure what you're saying is absolutely the exact same thing that's on the slide. All right, so if you're saying a bunch of words, like to me with, you're saying stuff to me and I'm like, wait, what is this? Wait, why is Apollo up there? Wait, what is meant? I don't know anything what you're saying.
So
If I'm gonna show something like this, I'm gonna go, now the next slide's really, really busy. I don't want you to read the slide. My focus here is on the third column. All right, don't show this slide. The second you show this slide, you've lost your audience. They're like, blah, 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 blah. They're trying to figure out the slide. Okay, so be real careful on that. So if you're gonna have a busy slide, set it up. This next slide is really busy, but I want you to look at, all right? So be real careful on that. I noticed that on your industry presentations, there was times where y'all are talking and I was reading your slide. It's like, wait, what do they have? What is that? Wait, that's going up, but that's going, wait, what did they just say? I just missed everything you just said. That's maybe what you wanted because you're really nervous. So maybe that's the goal, but no. So I'm going to save this one back out there, but you'll notice there's 2 pitch books. I'm not saying these are really, really good ones, but one of them I watched was actually pretty decent.
Itself, Fort Warner is a leading supplier to the speaker appreciate, leading to a U.S. dominant position in ESG. We're diving into our investment rationale, which are UWA's clean energy-oriented growth strategies, as illustrated by their charge-forward playbook, steady revenues backed by patented technology, aggressive M&A activity leading to a U.S. dominant position in ESG alignment. Now I will.
Pretty good job, right?
Yeah.
This is what in a nutshell, this is what our presentation is about. All right, she said what, 4 things, maybe 5? She got to it, is not really on her slide, right? She wasn't talking to the slide, she's just introducing it. So she just essentially gave the outline to their presentation. This is the things we're focusing on. You start with that. How long did that take her? Not even 20 seconds maybe, right? Now she's turning over.
An overview of Fort Warner. So for a quick overview of the company itself.
Then she can talk about the company quick. What does Warner do? Okay, the auto industry. I can never remember if they do mirrors or seats or something. They do something in the auto industry.
What are these videos called? Just stock?
These are competitions. This is actually, I think, women and
stocks.
no one, something, but anyway.
Fort Warner is a leading supplier to the automotive industry.
The cameraman's not really good, but anyways, he'll find her eventually.
Diversified variety of products.
A little busy, right? So I think that's too busy. I know that's what the CFA research challenge does because you're kind of limited on time. You just got to get it all out there. But I see a slide like that, I'm reading the slide. So if I'm going to do a slide this busy, I'm going to be circling things as I'm talking so that they focus on where I'm so we can do something that busy. I might do a red arrow when I'm talking about that, another red arrow, something like that. Maybe I'm overly, I get too focused on stuff. If someone gives me 80 words, I'm reading 80 words. And that to me is more important than what you're saying. So kind of know your audience. So find some way to focus them on.
Well, I think, are they giving the slide deck to the audience before their presentation?
They give them to them right before their presentation.
Uh,
They don't really have time to read them. So no.
Can't put that anywhere, yeah.
And it's a different group. Like they turn in their paper first, but that's a different group of judges than who's actually at the presentation. So
First, for individual stock pitches, is it just you viewing them, or are we gonna like get set up in a room? And are you
Well,
inviting our?
if we have 4 doing them in an hour and a half, we'll load all the presentations so we don't have technology time.
Sure.
We'll be doing it on Zoom, so we may have some technology. We have people calling in, but we'll be really strict on the time. So we can't go over 20 minutes. So you'll do 10 minutes of presentation, 10 minutes of questions, and then the next person needs to be up there ready to go. With the next presentation we go, and we'll just be like that. So you got to be pretty quick. You may have people in the audience that don't want to listen to this presentation. They don't care about Borg Warner, so they may jump in. So we got to keep on the schedule because they know you're presenting at 7:20. So we don't know. It may be confusing people jumping in and out on the Zoom, but hopefully you'll have an audience. We've had pretty good audiences on an industry presentation, so we'll see. But you see the organization and presentations not, I mean, it's pretty standard what people do. They're starting off the company not with the valuation. talking about growth. Who are the competitors? Again, a busy chart. So, you know, you can look through these and see what they do, what their slides are. Potential risk, mitigants, that's not a bad approach. You're gonna talk about a risk, do have the mitigant there. What could this firm do that happened? Would that be bad or not? There are some risks that would put them under. And then you have the Q&A, so
Patients are,
we're at the Q&A and they're only,
How long are they? 9 minutes?
does that look familiar?
Wait, that's the thing.
Y'all think I'm making stuff up, right? But this is what they do. So, this is not a bad chart. They have the upside and downside risk. They have a lot of quotes over here. We recommend to buy on Ward Warner. Steady revenue in 4 distinct channels, proven ability through aggressive acquisition activity. Yeah, I mean, it's what they're recommending, and you can see why they're recommending it. It's definitely, it's trading at the low end of its 52-week. They have a DCF. They have a relative. Analyst projections, I don't, I'm not sure about that one, but, so you see where you're going. I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel here. Can you look at one of these presentations and just do exactly what they did? Yeah, we copy each other all the time. There's no reason why you can't just say, hey, they did this slide first and they did this one. I'm going to do that. You could do that. It may not fit with your company versus Ward Warner, but we can see it's covering those kind of things. Your nervousness is, I think with a class like this, the issue is you get catatonic, you get stuck on one thing. So if you get stuck on one thing, I know we're out of time, but if you get stuck on one thing, say, you know what, I've been spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm not making any progress. Let me just put a placeholder. Let me go to the next thing. Because you get stuck on one thing, you'll never make any progress. All right.